The government is introducing powerful new measures to strengthen the landmark Modern Slavery Act 2015 and ensure that large businesses and public bodies tackle modern slavery risks in supply chains. In a world first, public bodies which have a budget of £36 million or more, including local authorities in England and Wales, will be required to regularly report on the steps they have taken to prevent modern slavery in their supply chains. The government is committed to harnessing the spending power of the UK's public sector, accounting for around £250 billion of spend, to ensure responsible practices in supply chains and bring it in line with businesses. Under the ambitious package of measures published today, the government has also committed to mandating the key topics that modern slavery statements must cover, from due diligence to risk assessment, to encourage organisations to be transparent about the work they are doing to ensure responsible practices. The government will also introduce a requirement for organisations with a budget of £36 million or more in all sectors to publish their modern slavery statements on a new digital government reporting service. This new service, which will be launched early next year, will radically enhance transparency, making it easier for consumers, investors and civil society to hold organisations to account for the steps they have taken to root out modern slavery. The announcement forms part of the government's response to the Transparency in Supply Chains consultation, which sought views from businesses, public bodies, investors and civil society on a range of options to strengthen the Modern Slavery Act's transparency legislation. The government has also committed to establishing a single enforcement body for employment rights, to better protect vulnerable workers and ensure a level playing field for the majority of employers complying with the law. The government will publish a response to this consultation in due course. The government will take forward options for civil penalties for non-compliance with the Modern Slavery Act in line with the development of the single enforcement body for employment rights. Peter McAllister, Executive Director of the Ethical Trading Initiative, said, "ETI is pleased to see the changes introduced by government, in particular mandated reporting areas and extension to the public sector. We hope that this leads to greater compliance and greater action from more companies. There is no excuse for any business not to play their full part to contribute to eliminating the scourge of modern slavery." The Modern Slavery Act 2015 made the UK the first country in the world to require large businesses to report on how they prevent modern slavery in their operations and supply chains. To lead the way for the public sector, in March 2020 the UK government published the world's first government modern slavery statement, setting out the steps taken to eradicate modern slavery from its supply chains on around £50 billion of its annual spending. Safeguarding Minister Victoria Atkins said, "Sadly, we know that no sector is immune from the risks of modern slavery which can be hidden in the supply chains of the everyday goods and services we all buy and use. We expect businesses and public bodies to be open about their risks, including where they have found instances of exploitation, and to demonstrate how they are taking targeted and sustained action to tackle modern slavery. All ministerial departments are now working towards publishing their individual modern slavery statements from 2021. We believe everyone, everywhere has the right to a life free from slavery. But right now, millions of children and adults are trapped in slavery in every single country in the world. Modern slavery is the severe exploitation of other people for personal or commercial gain. Modern slavery is all around us, but often just out of sight. People can become entrapped making our clothes, serving our food, picking our crops, working in factories, or working in houses as cooks, cleaners or nannies. From the outside, it can look like a normal job. But people are being controlled, they can face violence or threats, be forced into inescapable debt, or have had their passport taken away and are being threatened with deportation. Many have fallen into this oppressive trap simply because they were trying to escape poverty or insecurity, improve their lives and support their families. Now, they can't leave. Most products pass through a long chain of producers, manufacturers, distributors and retailers before they get to you. It can be very difficult to track a product's component back to a particular producer, for example cotton in a T-shirt back to a particular cotton farm. These long and complex supply chains make it difficult to oversee of who is working where and under what conditions, and the relentless drive for lower prices increases the human cost. Decades of voluntary corporate social responsibility has failed to protect people at the sharp end. Why? Because the global economy is set up to favor profits and a race to the bottom over the rights of the workers producing the goods. Although there have been some initiatives to improve the business response to the risks in their supply chains, much remains to be done. For example, the UK Modern Slavery Act obliged big businesses to report on the steps they take to tackle modern slavery in their supply chains. A number of 21st-century initiatives have been launched, to raise awareness for human slavery and promote actions to combat it. Most have clear supply chain requirements for organizations involved in the manufacture or production of goods and services. Manufacturers need to demonstrate compliance with local labor laws. The Modern Slavery Act was issued in the United Kingdom requiring all commercial organisations with business operations in the UK and global annual turnover of 36 million GDP or more to complete a statement as to the steps being taken to ensure that slavery and human trafficking are not taking place in any of its supply chains, and in any parts of its own business. A recent Reuters article underscores this challenge and call to action for organizations fighting slavery. Kevin Hyland, independent commissioner of the Act, said, "While the Modern Slavery Act has undoubtedly pushed modern slavery up the agenda and into the boardrooms of large businesses, this is just the first step. There is still much more to be done to ensure that companies produce statements that both comply with the Act's obligations and point to decisive action being taken, as opposed to merely being a tick-box exercise." Although modern slavery leaves a data footprint, it's difficult to detect and report because there's a lack of overt data on traffickers and offenders. Nevertheless, organizations can minimize their risk by thinking outside the box and looking for proxy data sets to support their risk information. Research shows a high correlation between money laundering, corruption and slavery risk, thereby offering the opportunity to utilize data from the financial, legal and tax areas that can act as proxies for modern slavery. The proceeds of slavery emerge in the financial system. Knowing that a country ranks high on the list for corruption risk and spotting money laundering red flags can be a starting point for modern slavery due diligence. As part of a wider risk-based approach, organizations can bucket suppliers into risk categories and adopt appropriate levels of due diligence to screen them.